So hopefully this video will only take like 1 hour or a bit over an hour, but there are 700 ships, and if I take 5 seconds on each ship, that's already 1 hour, and I do want to spend more than 5 seconds on some of the ships. Yeah, so hopefully I'm not missing any ships here. I did count the ships, and hopefully the numbers match. I mean, the numbers do match. Hopefully, like, there's not one missing ship and then one extra duplicate ship or something like that. But there might be some Easter eggs in here. So these images are really small, but don't worry, because when I paste them here, they'll be visible unless you're like sitting on the toilet with your phone. Yeah, so I want to spend less than 5 seconds on some of the ships. I'm on most of the ships actually, so I'm just throwing them in like F tier. These are just ships that I wouldn't use at all in chapter 15. So first, there are some things that need to be said, and that is, this is a tier list for chapter 15 and only chapter 15, and it is updated as of January 2024. Obviously new ships will be released, and new ships are like power creep strong. And another thing is why you should trust me. So I think I'm a pretty good player. I tested the good ships in chapter 15 lethal on Otto extensively, using both max tech and, or like not exactly max tech, but high tech and also low tech budget options. And I make fleets, so good players can copy fleets and win. I make those fleets that they copy. And furthermore, I study the game. Like, I do research by performing experiments, like watching battles, and also by understanding the game code. So I know a lot of mechanics and how to use those mechanics. And like some mechanics, even though they're complex, like knowing some mechanics doesn't change anything, but other mechanics do affect fleet building choices and understanding of synergies. Okay, so let's go over the criteria. So like obviously there are some tiers here. So SS would be like free win, like not exactly free, but if your fleets contain a few of these ships, then like maybe you have skill issue if you still lose. And oh yeah, I forgot to say that I don't script my videos. Making this table is the most I've ever scripted something. Like, I don't write what I'm going to say. So if you watch my other chapter 15 videos, sometimes, I mean, usually I make the fleets and then I explain everything about like the ships and gear. So you might be able to learn some things from that. And S tier, actually for chapter 15, this tier list will be mainly for just winning, like fighting enough mobs to spawn the boss and then defeating the boss immediately. But some ships are better, are especially good for 3-starring, and I'll try to note that when I talk about the ship. And then S tier is great pick, so like I think that's self-explanatory. And then A tier, these ships do things, like they do more than exist. Like in B tier they just exist. Like basically they're barely making the cut for like not dying and still doing something, while A tier does a little more than that. So this is not a fleet building guide, but I will talk about roles of ships, kind of. So like in chapter 15, usually you always want a battleship as the flagship, because there are suicide boats a lot of suicide boats, and they have to be defeated, since the Vanguard doesn't consistently stop them from the main fleet. So it's possible to bring triple carrier, but it's RNG and dangerous. And then healer is just healer, of course, and carrier is carriers who aren't healers. And usually for chapter 15 you do want to bring a lot of carriers in addition to healer, to have air supremacy and to have their intercepting airplanes to help with anti-air. And then here we have Vanguard. So Vanguard is broken up into, let's say, 3 roles, like tank, anti-air, and utility. So tank is just surviving. Like, hopefully it kind of means main tank. That ship can be the main tank when it's supported by 2 healers. But also some ships might do more than tank. And in those cases I might put the ship, like, for example, here and here. So that means that the ship, I mean, not Abercrombie specifically, but the ship can tank while still contributing great AA. So even if the ship isn't used in the main tank position, she is a great pick for her anti-air alone. And AA, of course, anti-air. Rika is chapter 15, a lot of enemy airplanes. And utility is like supporting the fleet in some way or another. For example, like buffing your fleet's survivability, or defending your main fleet in a special way, or just doing anti-submarine. Of course, all destroyers can do anti-submarine warfare if you just put a hedgehog on them. So the criteria for making it onto the utility list would have to be a bit more than just being a destroyer with hedgehog. And then there are some ships that just don't have particularly good in any one of these 3, but they are still good for chapter 15 because they kind of don't die and they just kill enemies. And then there are submarines, but submarine tiers don't matter that much because all of the gold submarines are similar in performance. The most important part of submarines is to just kill the enemies at the right time, and there's no big damage difference between the gold submarines for these like tiers to apply to them. So I'll just like order submarines sort of from top to bottom. And then we have support carriers. Those are carriers that go into the support fleet. Some carriers might appear here as well as in the main list. And then what? I don't know what this is. Okay, so let's get started. Maybe I'll go 10 at a time. So I'm not going to explain like why a ship is bad. I'm only going to explain why a ship is good if she makes it onto this chart. So Aber, Duca, Autobert, Attilio. Attilio is usually a decent destroyer. I mean, like one of the best gold destroyers, but this is chapter 15, and chapter 15, your Vanguard dies, and destroyers are really squishy here, especially if they have low anti-air. Albion is good. This replaces the borders. If I paste without formatting, then the borders get kept. So Albion has 4 fighter slots, and that means she's good for a support carrier, because support carriers only their fighters intercept. Their torpedo bombers don't intercept, even if you put Wyvern or Breguet there. But Albion has 4 fighters, so that's good. And she is also usable in your service fleets if you want, because just because she has 4 fighters, and also you can choose to put a wyvern on her, so then that's 8 total intercepting planes. It's a lot of anti-air, and she also has decent damage. And then Alfredo, Archon, Algerie, and Aurora, they're all F tier. Like that. And these will just be off screen most of the time. So Agano, Atago, Eden, and then Elbing, Eldridge, Ewan, and a bunch of Kizunas, all left here. And what? Okay, Essex. Essex is usable, I guess. He's a Eagle Union carrier, although she has a skill that if you have 4 Eagle Union ships in the fleet, then you take 12% less damage from planes, like 12% of plane damage gets blocked. But putting 4 Eagle Union ships in your fleet is just not a good idea, unless like those ships are actually broken, which is possible, but usually you don't activate that part of the skill. So she's just a generic decent ship with decent damage and decent interception. So if I run out of space on this main chart, then I'll boot some ships down to F tier. And Ägir, of course, she's a good tank. She's usually the tankiest CB, but this is chapter 15 with a lot of torpedo and plane damage, where her heavy armor is to her disadvantage. So that's also why in chapter 15 you never put VH armor, the cheese plate, on your large cruisers, because heavy armor is weaker than medium armor here. But she is still very tanky for a boss. Okay, and Exeter, useless. Allen is a destroyer with decent anti-air. So, but as a destroyer, like as a typical destroyer, she's really squishy, and I can't put her more than B tier, and she might even get dumped down to F tier later. And Emil Emden has no anti-air actually. Normally she has good DPS and buffs Ironblood, although Ironblood is just overall weak because they don't have anti-air, or they have very bad anti-air, so she goes to F tier as well here. And Eskimo and Ajax not worth talking about. So I need to delete these as I talk actually. And hopefully I don't mess up these ships' names, but sometimes like these irrelevant ships I forget their names. Achilles, Acasta, Alabama. Alabama is okay for mob, perhaps, but like she's really old. And Andrea, useless, but Anchorage is one of the best tanks for chapter 15. So like for she's even tankier than tankier than Ägir, but she does less damage and less less support by slowing and armor break boss. But she can tank both mob and boss, while Ägir only goes boss basically. And Anchorage also has a smoke screen which sort of protects your other Vanguard ships, so I think she can go to SS tier. Although my definition is kind of messed up, she's not a free win by any means. So let me put her back here. So that didn't work for Ägir. Anyways, this is all S tier, so I'm not going to order ships within the tier. Anshan normally has one of the best DPSs of all destroyers, but she is squishy like most destroyers, and in chapter 15 Vanguard DPS does not matter that much to be worth like bringing a squishy ship and then having to use your healers to carry that one specific ship. Like, so F tier. There's a big difference between some F tier and other F tier, obviously. Odin, not worth using because she has bad anti-air and doesn't do much to warrant like being on here. And then August is usable just because on boss she can freeze, although like in campaign you usually don't want to sync because you want stagger to defeat the first few waves of mobs, and also stagger helps with defeating enemy airplanes. So she is just here as a DPS option, not for anti-air. And of course Alec and Omaha are common ships. And Charles Destroyer Otto is a tanky destroyer. She's a tanky destroyer with decent damage. I think anti-air isn't that strong as Alan, so I'll put her here. Wait, no, it's not A. It's just miscellaneous. She does things. She lives, hopefully, and does damage. And Arethusa, Astoria, Abukuma, Bataan, Baltimore, Haku. Haku is one of the top damage carriers, but definitely not a free win because she has weak anti-air, so she only has 3 fighters and up to 2 torpedo bombers, so not a lot of interception, but she does a lot of damage. And Shiratsuyu, F tier. This is... I don't remember her name off the top of my head. Shi something. Anyways, it doesn't matter. They're all going to F tier anyways. So Argus F tier. Pain is a healer, but she's one of the weakest healers. I mean, weakest healers in relative to carriers. Weakest healers relative to light carriers, because she only heals the Vanguard and doesn't have a preload heal, doesn't have good damage, so usable at best. And Hamman Bunker is like Essex in that she just generic carrier, but she's the first one who's getting booted down to F tier if I run out of space. And Ikaruga, she's like a Takao upgrade, but Takao isn't that good in the first place. So she can tank, kind of, but chapter 15 tanks have a high bar, so maybe not. I'm not putting her here. Centaur has, like Albion, she has 4 fighters, so she's good for support carrier. And then she has weaker damage than Albion, so not putting her in support. I mean, the service fleet. And Rika has some of everything. She has some DPS, some tankiness, some healing for your Vanguard. So I think maybe just like either utility or misc. I'm putting her utility because you could put an anti-sub on her without losing much. And she also does heal Vanguard. And the Northamptons are not useful here. Belfast, not useful. DPS Destroyer, not useful. So Shimakaze is like Attilio. And North Carolina, not useful. Bailey, back. And Baron, Benson, Javelin, Curlew, none of these are useful. I think this is taking too long, so I'm just not going to like even read their names. Like, if you're not good, don't complain about not having your name remembered or mentioned. Right. Bismark Zwei is a battleship. She can so for 3-starring, she can take her certificate of promise and be SS tier, because reducing the out of ammo penalty for your mob fleet is huge. But that effect only works when you're out of ammo, and in chapter 15 you only have like 1 or 2 out of ammo battles unless you're going for 3-star. And in 15.4 specifically, which is the hardest one, there is an ammo node, so you never have to be out of ammo unless you're 3-starring. So overall, she is just S tier. And Brest is one of the best tanks because she is just like tankiest, and she also heals. So healing overall, like, even though the heal is really small, like, some healing is better than nothing, and she is just tankier than these two. Maybe not tankier than Anchorage, but she also does more damage and has better anti-air. And Bristol is like Allen, but like more on the damage or debuff side with less anti-air, so I'm not putting her on here. Indomitable is the best support carrier, like first place. So these first few support carriers have the ones that have 6 fighters. They have a small difference between them, so it doesn't matter if you pick like the first 3 or the last 3. When you get down to like carriers with 5 fighters or 4 fighters like Centaur and Albion, you lose quite some interception. But anyways, Indomitable has 6 fighters, and it has the highest efficiency multiplied by her aviation stat. So assuming all equal level and equal affinity, Indomitable is first place in support carrier. And she has also... there are way too many carriers over here in the B tier. She does great anti-air. But if you fill your fleet with the top anti-air ships, then like these carriers are just damage. Go on. So Indomitable does tank, kind of, but not really, so no. And Little Cheshire does anti-air, but she has terrible damage and also bad survivability, I think. I don't remember specifically, but Cheshire does more anti-air. I mean, she's better than Little Cheshire in every way. So she has great anti-air. And Cheshire also can like off-tank for the boss fleet, but I don't trust her on main tank, so like even I can put her here, I guess. so she's usable as the main tank for the boss fleet. I'll do F tier. Hatsuzuki is the 15-4 boss, the second boss, one of the 2 destroyer bosses, and she offers free healing for your fleet when she's on the enemy team, that is. So yeah, unfortunately on your team she is like F tier, but almost making it on here, I guess. Actually, I have a lot of space here, I can put her there. Leo is one of the best submarines. She has high oxygen, she stays underwater for longer, and she also does a lot of damage. Like one of the best damage submarines as well, even discounting her oxygen advantage. And she also has oil savings, because if she's in the fleet, you can use submarines when they're out of range for 1 time per sortie. So that saves oil for moving. Although like saving oil isn't part of her tiering here. A Hornet II generic DPS carrier, especially for light armor, but she's also decent on medium, and the chapter 15 bosses are heavy, medium. So like when you get to 15-3, 15-4, those bosses are medium, and light, like Hatsuzuki, and those are the hard ones. So this tier list, well, I forgot to mention that, but mostly focusing on 15-4, because 15-1 and 15-2 are just easy, because your Vanguard doesn't need anti-sub, and the enemy levels are also lower. Dido Muse might have usable anti-air, or Dido, I don't remember these, so like that's when I go to the wiki and have to look them up. So 400 anti-air with 135%, 140%, not very impressive, but this one is only for 30 seconds. That's not good enough for chapter 15, because battles last way longer than 30 seconds. And there's no way you're using Queen Elizabeth, so Dido no, but Dido Muse has a AA buff for your Vanguard, 15% AA for the whole Vanguard. So as long as, like, her weak point is just survival, so I can put her as usable on anti-air, but normal Dido does not make it. Shimakaze is one of the tankier destroyers, and she does a lot of damage. But like there's just, it's hard to put destroyers in chapter 15 fleets. Like if you put her on boss, that's not worth it, because boss battles are long, and it's just survival, that's the issue. And then for mob, if you're putting a destroyer, then she's probably taking your hedgehog, and then that's losing 500 HP from the auxiliary. So survival is also an issue here. Albacore is also one of the best submarines, because she has high oxygen and also great damage. Drake, the rainbow. It would be wrong not to put her somewhere on here, like even if she's B tier. So she's not main tanking anything. Well, actually she does tank as well as Cheshire, kind of. And she does more damage, so like the damage is decent enough to warrant like duplicating her on this column as well, I think. But just know that Cheshire is more useful because she has S tier AA. And Cheshire is cheaper as well. Impero has stagger, so stagger is useful for clearing enemy waves faster, especially in boss battles. You clear the early waves faster before they torpedo your vanguard to hell. But she has 5 intercepting planes if you put Wyvern, which is like not fantastic anti-air, but she also equalizes your main fleet health a bit, which is helpful for reducing RNG. So you don't want like one main fleet ship to just die early. Unicorn, I don't have to talk about her, right? She's best healer, like hands down. Independence will make it into support carrier because she has 4 strong fighters. Like strong fighters, actually, I'll put her here. Above Centaur and Albion, because her efficiency is higher, although she has maybe lower aviation, but the efficiency is just higher and makes up for it. And Independence also does great damage against in the boss fleet because of her stagger, so same as Impero, she gets stagger, and stagger is good for clearing the early waves. And also she has 8 intercepting slots when in the surface fleet if you put Wyvern. So like Flapjack plus Wyvern, that's 8 planes that intercept. That's a lot of anti-air. And you might see some end screens, like on end screen damage, Independence is MVP, but she doesn't actually do that much damage. A lot of her damage on the end screen is stat padded from killing enemy airplanes. What? That's Empress. Felix is like Otto but better, and Otto is here, Felix can be here. So Felix does things, she lives, like she definitely lives, and she also does great damage. So she can relatively safely take a hedgehog and do the anti-sub, but as I said in the beginning, I'm not putting destroyers with hedgehog in utility. So she is just misc, she lives and kills stuff. Although now like anti-air and utility will be kind of empty now that I think about it. Oh, that's not good. FDG is good, generic as a battleship, so not as good as Bismarck, because FDG usually is great for mob because her AoE damage, so her needles hit everything, but in chapter 15 hitting everything isn't good enough. When hitting everything, that means that you're hitting everything for like just a little bit of HP. But as a rainbow, she's still great. Kazagumo has carrier support, so she buffs carrier damage and also heals carriers, but she's too squishy to fit anywhere. So there, unfortunately. Chapter 15 only. Buffing carrier damage, however, by 15% means that when you're out of ammo, like going for a 3-star, your carriers do 50% damage. Buffing them by 15% adds So 50 to 65%, that's a 30% damage boost, which is quite sizable. But she is still too squishy, especially when you're going for 3-star. Volga is great healer. She focuses on healing the Vanguard, so focuses on the lowest HP ship. And if it's the Vanguard, her heal is worth more because she heals by her own HP percentage. So just overall great. Flandre is kinda squishy. Like, I wouldn't put her as the sole battleship in Mob. But if Alabama is here, then so can Flandre. And Voroshilov is pretty tanky, especially in anti-air maps like Chapter 15, so she gets tankier when anti-air guns fire, and she has decent everything. So, like, B tier and miscellaneous. What's the cow meta doing here? What was the previous one? Ikaruga. So Ikaruga and Garzia have similar tankiness, but it seems that I didn't put Ikaruga in, so Garzia will not be in as well. And Gloucester is special for 3-starring because she has the out of ammo debuff mitigation, which is additive with a minus 50% damage, as I explained with Kazagumo. But she does nothing else. She's kind of squishy and does no damage, no anti-air. So, like, no tank, no anti-air, but only utility for 3-starring. But her skill is literally the strongest in the entire game for 3-starring. So she does something, I guess. So 3-star only. Do not use her when you're not 3-starring. Guam. She's the best tank. Like, literally tankiest ship. And also highest anti-air. Like, she has higher personal, I mean, she's just Cheshire but better in every way. And also anchors but better in every way in Chapter 15, I guess. So her anti-air is the strongest individual, and she also buffs the fleet by a bit. Compared to Sandy, Sandy has a bit weaker anti-air, but Sandy buffs the fleet by more than Guam does. But Guam is just top 1 or top 2 anti-air. So Illustrious Muse is, if I recall correctly, 4th. 6 fighters. And Little Illustrious is 5th, with also 6 fighters, while Illustrious is 3rd, with 6 fighters, of course. And this is running out of space, actually. I'm planning ahead because I already know who's going here. Harbin is generic. She does damage, she smokes. Smoking is not good for your health, kids. but it is good for your Vanguard's health. She does damage, she kinda survives. Like maybe same as Felix. I mean, she survives less than Felix, but she does damage and smokes. And however, the smoke, I don't think it's good enough to warrant putting her in utility instead of misc. So I'll just keep the utility empty. Helena, if you... I mean, the boss battles are kind of long. They have not as long as Chapter 14. The number of waves in Chapter 14 bosses is quite impressive. Chapter 15 is... the beginning waves are shorter by a bit, but Helena is still not good because you want to stagger. If you stagger, then you're not getting Helena's debuff with all of your main fleet ships. And she is just squishy. So I think I could put her B on utility actually. How is a generic gold battleship more suited for boss? But basically in Chapter 15 your boss fleet has like 2 slots for carriers and 1 slot for battleship. The battleship is just there to kill 2 suicide boats. So like in boss battles there are 2 suicide boats that spawn close to the beginning of the battle, and the battleship's only job is to kill them. And also do damage, of course. So like 2 good battleships and 1 good carrier will do more damage. I mean, it's better than 1 good battleship and 2 mediocre carriers. But in general, you should try to put more carriers than battleships. And what's Bonhomme Richard doing here? Neptunia. More 2018 or 2019 collabs. Like obviously they're power crept heavily. Or maybe they were never good, I don't know. What's Hermit doing here? And same with Hierophant. Tamaki is a generic good gold BC. Just like how she does great boss damage. I'm not sure about her like tankiness, but I think she does have heavy armor actually, which is not relevant. I think I killed the wiki page. I should not do this because the video is going to be like really long. But Tamaki has 300 AA, that's okay. And like everything about it is okay. Royal Fortune explodes in Chapter 15. She's not a submarine, she enters the battle, she surfaces immediately, and she explodes. Even if she doesn't explode, she will leave the battle as soon as she drops below, like, what was it, 50% HP? Which is going to happen really quickly, and it means that she doesn't do damage. As gold submarines, these are okay, but they don't have great oxygen, and they also do less damage than these American submarines and Leo. So I think they're like bottom of the golds. And purple submarines are not going to make it. One-third done. There's nothing here. Gasconia is also possibly usable as the mob battleship, but I never tried her. Because like if you're not using a rainbow battleship, then you're going to struggle dealing enough damage to end the battle at the right times, and then battle will stretch longer, which means you take more damage from planes, and your vanguard also takes more damage because enemy torpedoes and planes, usually they can outdamage your healer. So the longer the battle is, the lower health your fleet will end up. Jervis can tank when she's in a fleet of destroyers and light cruisers only, but like maybe just mob tank, usable mob tank. Golden Hind suffers the same problem as Royal Fortune. Or no, I'm stupid. She is not a submarine. So Golden Hind does decent damage, but she has 0 anti-air, which means that, 0 anti-air stat, which means that any bomb that touches her will like almost explode her. But if you can work around her, she can give 1 extra ammo for your fleet by bringing round shot, which Tempesta can use. So round shot gives you 1 extra ammo, your fleet has 6 ammo, which is not useful for 15-4, because for 15-4 you either have enough ammo or you don't have enough ammo, and there's no case where you're missing just 1 ammo. So Golden Hind not useful for 15-4, but she could be useful for 15-1 through 3 for like 1 extra. For 1 extra battle, your fleet does double damage relative to out of ammo. Kapala, same deal as Albacore, but just weaker in every way. San Francisco, as the middle slot, can heal your vanguard, but she doesn't have notable AA to make it on here, but her AA isn't completely like moot. But I would not put San Francisco as the main tank, because she's just not as good as these. So like she's just here for utility, for healing when she's in the middle slot. Kala is a large cruiser, she can tank, but she is tied for the least tanky large cruiser, which is still tankier than Drake, to be fair. But she does a lot less damage than Drake. And Kron is, of course, another large cruiser. She does things, but she's not as tanky as Anchorage. She does more damage than Anchorage, but isn't as tanky. So actually, I can put her S. Klaudia is a great healer. She is almost as good as Unicorn at healing, and she does more damage than Unicorn. The only problem is that she doesn't have preload airstrike, but she does have preload healing. So she is just slightly weaker than Unicorn in healing, but better damage. And same as Unicorn, she can take... I mean, she costs more to use because she has 2 torpedo bomber slots. Klaudia. If you do fill her both of her torpedo bomber slots with Wyvern, which is expensive, using 2 Wyverns on 1 ship, but she will end up with 7 intercepting airplanes, which is good, just like Unicorn. Nothing here. Laffey II is as tanky as Guam, tanky as Brest, and has as good anti-air as Cheshire. And she is so tanky without... I mean, you can remove one of her defensive oxes and she'll not lose that much tankiness because she caps damage taken from torpedoes and bombs. Torpedoes and bombs in Chapter 15 do huge amounts of damage per hit, and she just caps that. So you can remove her defensive oxes without losing too much tankiness, which means that you give her Hedgehog, and she can still main tank. She can main tank as Hedgehog user and have decent anti-air. Like broken ships, these two broken ships. Power creeping Chapter 15 like 3 months after its release. Suzu is like Hatsu, but I think she's probably a little worse. I'll put her here for now and kick her down if needed. So like the only destroyers that make it on here are like really special destroyers like Shimakaze, or they're just tanky enough to hold their own. What? I mean, like, seriously, what? Who is this? Ligon. What? Ligon? Okay, that's off topic anyways. This section is just a meme. Ruho is a healer, but she only heals for 3 airstrikes per battle, and since she has pretty bad damage herself, battles will last longer than 3 airstrikes. And she only heals, like, she specializes in healing your Vanguard ships with low HP. And, like, she's pretty bad at healing your battleship when they take damage from airplanes. Like, I question if I should even put her on B or just F. I think F. what's the lovers doing here? Luna has fast load, she does damage, but like she's just... Is she worse? Is she worse than these? I mean, I don't think she's worse than Essex, at least. Halfway done. Rupp is not here for her healing, but she does... I mean, she can handle mobbing. Like, at least better than these. She just, like, does damage. And also, the healing is a nice bonus. 2% healing for your lowest HP ship every 10 seconds. Healing the lowest HP ship is great because it reduces RNG variation. And Marco, if these other gold battleships are here, then Marco can be too. Actually, Marco is kind of advantageous for chapter 15 compared to the other golds because she has good AA. Like, she actually has good AA. And she has the out of ammo thingy. And out of ammo mitigation. So Mary is like Royal Fortune. She will explode. And Marseille has... I guess she can go to Misk. Because she does like okay damage and she's tanky. But I do know that previously I put Gishin in F tier. So Marseille is just a bit better than Gishin, especially when you use other French ships than that she can buff, like Brest, for example. But there are very few French ships on here, so that's not an important factor. And now again, it would be kind of wrong if I put like some of these ships here, but not Montpellier. Montpellier has usable anti-air, and she's also tanky enough to survive. Nelson is good for mobbing, but like FDG doing a bit of damage to everything isn't that useful, and she might not have the focus damage necessary to kill those carriers in mobbing. So like some of these battleships are here for boss, and some of them are here for mob, like Alabama and Gas. But I think Nelson will be worse than Gas in mobbing, because Gas also does heal. Nelson does not heal. Noshiro protects your vanguard from torpedoes, and there are a lot of torpedoes in chapter 15, but she doesn't do much else. And only torpedo damage is protected against, not airplane damage like bombs and torpedo bombers. So like B tier as well. And Ning is very tanky, but only when paired with Yatsen. So she has to be paired with Yatsen in order to be here as tank. And is for mob only, but the Great Wall of China is so tanky that you can put Hedgehog on them still. So like, actually they don't have good anti-sub. So you can put Hedgehog on someone else and put Purple Death Charge on Ning, and they'll still be fine. There's nothing here except that Patricia is kind of tanky for the battleship. And Ping is like Ning, but just worse. So like if you have Ning, you never take Ping, because they require Yatsen, and if you take Yatsen and Ning, and then for the third slot you can't take another China Wa, because then your fleet will have no anti-sub, no anti-air, and no damage. It's just tankiness. So Ping is only here if you don't have Ning and you still want to use Yatsen and Great Wall. Vanguard is the Rainbow BB with the least damage, apart from Warspite, the fake rainbow. But she is still a great pick because she has like insane anti-air, and she is fast. So even if you have 0 battleship reload tech, you can. She can, with 457mm, she can deal with those large aviation formations without your main fleet taking airplane damage. Like this fleet can heal against large air formations. And I guess this is where I shamelessly plug my Vanguard video. Kearsarge is Rainbow as well. She does a lot of damage, but she doesn't have strong secondary guns. So she leaks all suicide boats. Every single suicide boats will leak and hit the main fleet. So she is very limited in usage. She's limited to being an off-flag battleship. If you take one battleship and then you put her on the side, she does damage, but then she has less anti-air than a carrier does, and she also contributes less ACV than a carrier does. But she does a lot of damage. And if you do decide to use her as the only battleship in flag position or whatever position, then she can only go to boss fleet, and only for like first and third boss in 15.4. Those boss battles only have 2 suicide boats at the beginning, so if you manual, I'm tiering everything based on auto actually, but if you manual, you can have your Vanguard delete those 2 suicide boats. And if you're on auto, then you can summon submarines early within the first 10 seconds of the battle, but that means your submarines will die. So don't do that against the first boss, but on the third boss, the final battle of the sortie, you can summon subs early and deal with suicide boats which allows Kearsarge to be the only battleship. But otherwise she's just hard to use, but does a lot of damage. And Shklov also does a lot of damage, but she has 0 fighters. And so like she only gets 4 intercepting planes if you put Wyvern on her. So like I don't think I am going to put her on here. What? Who is this actually? Is it like Observer or something? Or like, okay, never mind. This is wasting time. What? Enterprise meta. Okay, Enterprise is a boss carrier, and her only weakness here is that she only has 3 fighters and 2 torpedo bombers, 2 pretty weak torpedo bombers, so 5 intercepting planes, but she does a lot of damage. And again, these within tiers, they're not ranked by any order, like hopefully. Wakatsuki comes with free anti-submarine, but you still need Hedgehog, and if she takes Hedgehog then she's too squishy. But for her special anti-sub, I will put her B in utility. Saratoga has too many dive bombers, they don't intercept. She doesn't contribute much anti-air, but she does have decent damage. But unfortunately it's not enough to beat these carriers anti-air and other utility. San Diego, obviously, top tier AA. Together with Guam, they're about equal. As I said, Sandy buffs fleet AA more, but Guam has better personal AA. And Sandy can also take Hedgehog. And that's Sandy is like the best or second best, one of the two. So like Laffey II and San Diego are the 2 best pairings for the China Wall, because the China Wall lacks anti-air and lacks anti-submarine, so the 3rd Vanguard ship, the one you put in the middle, has to satisfy both of those points. And Sandy with Hedgehog and Laffey with Hedgehog, they both do anti-air and submarine. And Jean is, of course, SS tier in utility, because she boosts your Vanguard survivability by a huge amount. So she works in both mob and boss, and kind of weak anti-air and anti-sub, but like your Vanguard just survives. Jintsuu META does damage with torpedoes, and she's hard to kill. And for being hard to kill, she can go to MISC. Archerfish is one of the top submarines. High oxygen, high damage. Scylla has decent anti-air, and she is kinda tanky enough, but like she has better anti-air than these. So I think she's just slightly better than usable. And Shimanto has top tier anti-air, less than these two, but still top tier anti-air, and she also has SS tier utility because especially for 3-starring, because when you 3-star you can't avoid those large main fleets and medium main fleets for the enemy, and those battles contain some battleships that light your main fleet on fire, and when your main fleet gets lit on fire they just lose a lot of HP. So Shimanto, using correct torpedoes to time, she can extinguish those fires a few seconds after they get lit. So together with her anti-air, she's a huge bonus to your main fleet's survivability, and she's also tanky enough to live on off-tank or middle, like any position. Not really the main tank though, and she also does damage. About 200 ships left. Flasher is another, the newest Eagle Union submarine, also best oxygen, among the best oxygen and among the best damage. So nothing much to say there. And what's strength doing here? TB is coming soon TM to your base. And Tempest Aquila SS tier, very deservedly, because she heals your main fleet. She's the strongest healer for your main fleet, and she still heals your vanguard pretty well as well, but obviously only as the secondary healer, so you always need one of Unicorn or Klaudia or Perseus, if people still use Perseus in 2024. So you need like one of these, one or more of these, and then maximum of one secondary healer. So like secondary healer does not substitute for your main healer like Unicorn, because they only heal very few ships at a time, but their heal is targeted at the lowest HP ships, and that's very helpful. And Aquila has some specific synergies as well with certain ships that have not appeared on this list yet. And by the way, I tested, so Unicorn plus Aquila is enough to keep Guam or Laffey II full HP. So Laffey II can main tank no problem, even when she's not healed by Volga. Volga heals destroyers by, Laffey II is like immortal when paired with Volga, but even with Aquila she doesn't die. And Tower, first place popularity poll, but unfortunately she just goes to Watt. Ticonderoga is similar to like these. I guess she's better than Bunker Hill perhaps. So I need to kick one of these. I guess Bunker Hill for now. a gold submarine, but U-101 is one of the... I mean, she is the weakest gold Ironblood submarine, but she's still a gold submarine and does damage. Has some weird skills though. U-37 has high oxygen and does damage, but there's no space in the first row to put her in. But I would put her up there even when she's not paired with other Wolfpack members. U-47 has less oxygen, but actually she doesn't do that much damage because she specializes in bosses, because she needs to hit the same enemy consecutively with torpedoes in order to maximize her damage. And in chapter 15 we're just fighting mobs, and during the boss battle there's also smoke, and she might not aim at the same boss for a long period of time, so she kind of loses damage compared to other Wolfpack members. U-556 meta is also like less oxygen than these top two rows, but she does damage, as much damage as them. Same with U-81 and U-96. And what is this? I don't remember this one's name. This is Compiler, I guess. Aqua is a gold submarine, but her oxygen is terrible. I'll just put all the gold submarines on this list anyways though. There's a slot of 4 here. Nothing here. I want to keep these here though. This one. Owari is the strongest gold battleship for several purposes in terms of damage, but she also kind of boosts anti-air for your main fleet with a low probability, but I think it's okay to put her with these two. And Ulrich is a rainbow battleship, but she's, I mean, she can go flag, but then when she's flag, she's one of the weakest rainbow battleships, and when she's off flag, then same problem as Kearsarge. If she's off flag, then you lack a flagship battleship, which means that you need to deal with suicide boats somehow. And unlike Kearsarge, Ulrich doesn't have fighters to help with anti-air or ACV, and she also does less damage than Kearsarge. So, A, I guess. Azuma is a CB like Kala, but just a bit better damage. Not better tankiness, but it does better damage. Isuzu has one of the best anti-airs in the game, but she sucks. Like, you have to invest so much to keep her alive, and she does no damage. She only does anti-air. So like when you're bringing 2 healers, the secondary healer is gonna have to be focusing on Isuzu because she's going to be low HP. Musashi, obviously. SS. Because she's the battleship with the best anti-air, not because she does anti-air, but because she tanks enemy airplanes. So like 30% damage resistance to airplanes, and you can even put anti-air radar on her to like boost her resistance even more. And she has top 2 damage together with Bismarck and Kearsarge. She works in both mob and boss. She has insane synergy with Aquila, because Aquila heals Musashi. I mean, the main thing is that Musashi redirects all damage from the other 2 carriers. Like, if you're using these 3 together, Musashi keeps Unicorn and Aquila full HP while reducing the damage she takes. Which means that Aquila will always heal Musashi, because Musashi is the lowest HP among these 3. And each heal from Aquila, 8% of Musashi's HP is huge, because Musashi has like 11,000 HP. And Aquila also, after healing, adds a shield on top of that to block even more plane damage and the screen damage. Shangri-La is like another one of these. But, oh, she got an augment recently, which increases her damage over the duration of the battle. So like she's more suited for a boss. I'd say more suited for boss than August is. So she contributes more anti-air. Another problem with August is that she requires an Iron Blood plane for one of her skills to buff her aviation and reload. Reload is not important, but aviation is here. And there aren't any good Iron Blood planes that do anti-air. It's like if you take Torpedo Bomber, then it's not a Wyvern, it doesn't intercept. Not Wyvern nor Brigette. If you put an Iron Blood Dive Bomber, they don't have any good dive bombers. And then if you go to fighters, then the only choice is one of the rocket fighters, which does no interception at all, or the Messerschmitt or Focke-Wulf A5, which do no surface damage, and she's here for surface damage on the boss. So basically you can't put an Iron Blood plane on her, so she kind of suffers. Udachi is sorta tanky. Yeah, I'm just putting like a bunch of destroyers with nothing special here. And oh, it's already been like 1.5 hours. It'll be within 2 hours though. Hindenburg, if you put double heavy cruiser gun on her, then she does a lot of damage. But then she has 0 anti-air. But if you put anti-air on her, then she does a bit less damage, but still has much as Drake. And she's tankier than Drake, and yeah, so like usable with anti-air gun, or she does damage if you put heavy cruiser gun on her, but just know that here she does no anti-air, like 0 anti-air. Shinano is like Haku. New Jersey is like Bismarck. Just slightly less damage, but better anti-air. And I ran out of space. Houston 2, you don't have her because she drops on 15-4. But other than that, she's like Montpellier, except that I don't think she does anti-air. %120% and 12% anti-air and 24% anti-air actually, and she's tanky, of course. So actually she does do some anti-air, like usable. And same deal with Seattle. Seattle with 2 anti-air guns does some anti-air, but like usually you would put 2 light cruiser guns on her, but vanguard damage doesn't matter that much here, as much as anti-air. Fubuki is another boss battleship, another top boss battleship among gold ships, but she's kind of anti-heavy, which are in 15-1 and 15-2. So I think I can kick Hao out though. So like Fubuki is good in 15-1, 15-2. I mean usable, I mean. But in 15-3 and 15-4 she's still okay, but just less special compared to like these other ones. Last 100. Hamura, if you give her augment, she surfaces early for 5 seconds and dies. But if you don't give her unique gold augment, or if you don't max it, I mean you should still max it, but just don't put it on her. So if you put a purple augment on her, then she can be like an average gold submarine, like below average in this case. Actually, like maybe with you 101. Warspite, the fake rainbow, is just worse than these. Maybe not worse than Alabama, but they do different things. Queen Elizabeth meta is like similar to these Tamaki, Fubuki, Owari. So I want to kick someone out, which is gonna be either Alabama or Gascogne. I'll just kick Alabama here. Ingraham does a little bit of everything. She has a bit of AA like Allen, and yeah, not much else, not much utility else. Yatsen, I already explained. She has to be paired with a Chinese ship, and that Chinese ship is preferably Ning Hai, but possibly Harbin. Harbin is just weaker though, because Harbin needs healing from the secondary healer. Implacable is the second strongest support carrier with her 6 fighters, high efficiency, high aviation stat. And as a carrier herself, I mean, I guess like free win is Actually, yes, free win. For her very high anti-air, 9 intercepting airplane slots, and also good damage. But if you're using interception planes, then they don't do good single target focus damage to take advantage of her slow and freeze. But she's still best, top. Yorktown, what? I think I should have enough spaces for these. Make one more. Yorktown 2 is here with 5 fighters for support carrier, so 5 fighters. Oh, that means I need one more space here because there is someone else. So 5 fighter is worse than these 6 fighter ones, but better than these 4 fighter carriers, especially since she has high aviation stat, so she beats these. And I guess I'll have to move them over. So one more slot for someone. And Unzen is top vanguard damage like Hindenburg with, this Hindenburg. But like Hindenburg, she doesn't do much of anything else. So here. A bunch of Z destroyers here, which means they're all going straight to F. More Z destroyers. So Z46 has the Z46 has some anti-air skills, but not enough to put her on here. And otherwise, she's just same as Z23. There should be more, right? No? List of ships. So there are 680 minus 8. Minus 8 collab ships that we can't get. These 8, so 672. But I put a bunch of watts, which means that it should be more than this. Like maybe I'm missing some ships. Hopefully nobody important. Juno has usable anti-air, but she doesn't do much else. And there's no space here. I wonder if I can like promote someone like that. Houston is pretty tanky and does decent damage and also good anti-air. And that was this. So just these 4 left. So like 674. Not sure if that's correct because I have like a bunch of these. Oh, yeah, I am missing this one. Apparently I put her in trash by mistake. So she is somewhere in F tier that. So I need to go look for her now out here. Mainly Retrofit has 6 fighters but really low aviation. But those 6 fighters, assuming you're putting like catapult and also Tenrai for stat padding, for aviation stat padding, and also the Augment Scepter, she fully kitted out Langley still slightly beats fully kitted out Yorktown too in terms of fighters. So I reran the script and found the missing ships. And there's one other thing though, I forgot to put Yorktown 2 in the main list as well. So she's going to be SS with Implacable because she has 5 fighters, which is better than Enterprise, and also a bunch of other barrage planes and interception that deals with other anti-air, and she does damage as well. And hopefully none of these other ones I forgot about. Illustrious though. Illustrious is a pseudo healer because she gives the Vanguard barriers, and that's basically like equivalent to healing if the Vanguard would have taken damage while they were barriered. So she also has like some damage, I guess, like that. So she's a secondary healer. Kind of the right column is kind of secondaries and left column is kind of main healers, if you can call Pain a main healer. Okay, so let me tier these 16 missing ones. So that's the last Watt. And Plymouth is, she's not tanky enough to tank, although she is like around these tankiness. So like here, she doesn't have much anti-air, like as much as this. She doesn't have like utility in the sense of these utilities, but she does do damage, like a lot of damage, like these two with the battleship buff. So helping your battleship do more damage is included here. This, well, like if she's on boss, then buffing the battleship means that she's also doing more than these two. And if she's mob, then buffing the battleship is also good to make sure that the battleship kills those enemy carriers fast enough. So yeah, I think she can be above Insen and Hindenburg. Perseus is a main healer, like Unicorn, but just worse. So compared to Klaudia, Perseus does a lot more healing, but she doesn't do damage. So like, I think like maybe this is just a bit too high. So A tier. And that's it. So that should be the finished tier list, and it looks like I could squeeze the tank down to 3 columns, as well as utility down to 3 columns, but then that would mean getting rid of some Watt or putting it elsewhere.